So, as you've heard, in Ireland, we have a very heavy inspectoral system within our sector. So what does that actually look like in real life? So for a start, it puts a really onerous burden on services to tick, and educators obviously, to tick an awful lot of boxes. Boxes, by the way, whose relationship to quality has not been either established or confirmed by the very educators that have to tick those boxes. But it can also lead to the homogenisation of services, or what they might look like. So, for example, I spoke to one educator who had had service for quite a long time in a listed or protected building, a Georgian building in central Dublin. And essentially, she had to close her service because she couldn't guarantee that the owners of the building would agree to certain stipulations put forward by inspectorates. So, for example, hardwiring fire alarm systems into the building. So her point to me was she couldn't guarantee that they were going to do it. She couldn't wait around long enough to see if they were going to. But her other point was that she kind of felt, why should they? Why should they have to do that when there was a system in place that was already working? And I have to say I agree with her, because now you have a group of children who don't get to have that aesthetic experience of the authenticity of that building, and those children have a right to experience that building. So I kind of have to agree with her there, that a lot of these inspection demands means that services have a tendency potentially to look the same, and obviously individuality is something that we need to celebrate within services. So those kinds of burdensome quality systems, the other thing that they do is they undermine the expertise, the judgment, and really importantly, the value system of the experienced, professional, caring educator. It takes away their autonomy in deciding or in structuring or in creating environments that are caring and nurturing. And I think that's kind of not only a shame, but dangerous. They also essentially are the total antithesis of what's valued within a relationally centred sector. So that kind of closed-minded inspection process, which only seeks to find something and fix it, or to look at creative practice and potentially shut it down, is, or in essence, to kind of find fault. They seem to be there to find fault. That totally or absolutely contrasts with an open-ended educational approach which seeks to nurture, to collaborate, and to celebrate both individuality and connectedness. So there's a deep, deep divide between the philosophies behind these two approaches, while each maintain that they have a value, or they value a quality agenda. Both approaches say, yeah, we aim for quality. And yet the philosophies that underpin those two approaches are completely different, or on the surface seem to be completely different. Unfortunately, it's our opinion that accountancy underpins the philosophy of one approach, while care and sustainability underpin the other. While funding is undoubtedly a very important aspect of the provision of early childhood education, we have a fundamental issue with that being the only focus of what constitutes quality. And we most definitely have an issue with the idea that throwing money at something is going to suddenly elevate its quality. It's such a complex issue, but the conceptualization of quality tied into funding as opposed to processes or pedagogy or relationships is fundamentally problematic. Even when money is not an issue, that does not guarantee quality provision. And in evidence of that, I present Georgia and myself as living examples of that contradiction, or that problem. So if money was no issue, you would imagine that a service that has funding that is only going to be reinvested in that service. So essentially a not-for-profit model of provision, such as community provision, is going to be substantially higher quality than a service that is run as a business model, because potentially, money is going to be made. But then I present, as I said, Georgia and myself. So Georgia, and I'm sure you've established her context by now, but runs her own services. So on paper runs a business model. However, I can say that the quality of provision in Georgia's settings is outstanding. I have only worked in community settings. One was a small local community setting which was based in the primary school system in Ireland. It was any money that funded was only focused on supporting the service. But there was a fundamental difference between how my class, for want of a better word, within the primary school setting was viewed or considered in comparison to the other classes within that setting. So the money, where the money came from, what the money was for, two different contexts. On one, it should be about making money. The other should be for community. The provision in the business model in this instance far outdid the provision in the community one, because there wasn't the same regard or understanding for what was happening within the community-driven one. I'm now involved in another community role where I'm supporting community-run services. I'm in a constant battle between trying to support quality provision within the settings that I'm involved in, and, for example, the health and safety person, or I'm saying, children need to dig in dirt and they need to climb and they need to run and shout, and the health and safety person is saying, can't have that, can't have that, can't have that, because the health and safety person is working off obviously their a frame of knowledge, the knowledge and understanding, the appreciation of what happens in early childhood, the recognition of the importance of those fundamental years in children's development is not understood or known in a wider context. So unfortunately, I'm fighting a battle there. So again, it roots down to that deep philosophical divide between looking at something on the surface, thinking it's about money, and not what should be, which is about really valuing the incredibly kind of transformative impact of a deeply relational or caring early childhood education system. Within our model, we would like parents to move from a position of being really consumers of early childhood education care to being architects, builders, collaborators within the system. We recognise now that at the moment in the Irish context, the whole idea of early childhood education is problematic for parents because it's something they have to try and find, try and organise, try and pay for. That's such a negative mindset to experience anything. We want them to feel to have ownership over the whole, a shared ownership over the whole system, because they're such an important part of it. We want them to recognise that early childhood education and care has a transformative impact on how their families grow and develop, and coming late to the game is kind of not good enough. You know, they need to be in a position where they can contribute in shaping what early childhood education looks like for themselves and for everybody. Within our model, consideration of the community incorporates supporting the community in viewing early childhood education as a public good which works towards building community and building society for everybody. It's also about developing a sense of communal responsibility. Hang on, it's not just about the government, it's not just about early childhood service managers, it's not just about, it's about everybody contributing towards building an early childhood system that that enables everybody to thrive. So it's about kind of acknowledging that symbiotic relationship. Yeah, a really effective early childhood education builds a community, but also community has a responsibility to build effective early childhood education. You know, it's that kind of back and forth. So it's about advocating early childhood education as a kind of a shared experience within the community, but also that has an effect in building and supporting that community.